Good afternoon. I'm Joyce Barrett, and I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. Webinars are brought to you as a membership benefit of Heritage Ohio. Heritage Ohio's mission is helping people to save the places that matter, build community, live better. Today, we will have a presentation on how Wi-Fi can revitalize your downtown. We will be taking questions throughout and at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please type it into the question box at any time, and we will read those at the end. Most issues with webinar software will be solved if you close the program and restart it with the link that was sent to you. Tomorrow, we will be sending out a link to the recording of this webinar. If you want a copy of the presentation itself, please let us know by email. You can email info@heritageohio.org. Today, our presenter is Katie Meyer. Katie Meyer is the Smart City Policy and Program Manager at Cincinnati Bell. In her role, Katie works with municipalities and organizations to navigate smart city planning and implementation. Prior to Cincinnati Bell, Katie served as the Executive Director of Renaissance Covington for 9 years, where she implemented public Wi-Fi, several large-scale creative placemaking initiatives, and public events. Under her leadership, Renaissance Covington earned the Great America Main Street Award from the Main Street America for their preservation-based revitalization efforts. Katie earned her MS in Urban Policy Analysis and Management from the New School in New York City. She also holds a BA in Political Science and Journalism from the University of Kentucky. So we're ready for Katie. You can take it away.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you to Heritage Ohio and to all of you for being here today. I'm so excited to talk to you about our public Wi-Fi program at Cincinnati Bell. Like Joyce mentioned, I'm a Main Street director. I came over to Cincinnati Bell earlier this year, and what we've been doing is developing our public Wi-Fi program based on a lot of the work that we developed in Covington as an approach to how we can utilize Wi-Fi and smart city applications to support Main Street revitalization. Hold on, there we go. So before I jump in, I just wanted to cut off any questions about the ability to implement our solution beyond Cincinnati. Our fiber footprint certainly is more concentrated in the Cincinnati and growing into in the Dayton market, but we have a national footprint. We are a telecommunications company that is growing, and we have national affiliation. As far as Ohio goes, we have offices as far up as Mayfield Heights and Cleveland, and where we don't have fiber, we can work with a local provider to still execute a public Wi-Fi network. So I just wanted to clarify that before going through the presentation. Broadly, when asked what a smart city is, the answer varies depending on who's answering the question. There are a lot of different approaches. You know, in Columbus, obviously, we see a very transportation-centric focus. As far as what we're doing at Cincinnati Bell, we're looking at it from the foundation of fiber with a public Wi-Fi network, mesh network, and then integrated solutions like smart lighting, cameras, kiosks, traffic flow, etc. So the smart city universe we're working within. But today we're talking primarily about public Wi-Fi or intelligent Wi-Fi, and what that means is we're looking at a fiber backbone that is connected to an access point, and the access point, it looks like what you can see in the top right corner here. That creates a mesh network, and those have about 300, they emit a Wi-Fi network 300 feet omnidirectionally. So you might think 1 or 2 per block, depending on how large your blocks are. And then they collect data that can be utilized to understand what's going on in downtown. So it's fiber backbone, installation of hardware access points, and then a software overlay that creates a communications platform and a data platform. So this product was developed to intentionally not use an app. It's a captive portal solution. So what that means is that if you want to connect to the Wi-Fi network, you simply go to your Wi-Fi settings. You look for, in this example, Middletown Free Public Wi-Fi, and you click on, and then that takes you through this captive portal journey. So the first thing that happens is your browser pops up, and it welcomes you to the city. These are mock-ups. These are not real. This is just as an example and to help tell the story. We are working with the city of Middletown right now on public Wi-Fi in their downtown, but that's not what their portal experience looks like. I just wanted to help demonstrate what it might look like. So there's in that portal to potentially advertise small businesses or upcoming events or programs, depending how you want to structure that. Everything is very customizable. So you log in, you provide your email address. There are terms and conditions that you opt into, and then you authenticate into the network. So when you authenticate into the network, you have a landing page that comes up on your screen. What we did in Covington, what we developed was a communication strategy utilizing that captive portal to help tell the story of our downtown. So as people log into the Wi-Fi, they get the information they need about local businesses, upcoming events, public transit, iconic places, anything that we wanted to help a visitor understand and navigate from the perspective of our Main Street organization. So for example, with shopping, it's a direct link. You don't have to reinvent the content. And it went directly to our website at Renaissance Covington that had all of our shopping, all of our retail stores. And so the retail stores come up. They are hyperlinked to the Google location. So you see a small business that you want to go to, you click on it, then it pulls up Google Maps, and it becomes a web-based wayfinding system for those sorts of programs. So you go through that process. You're connected to the Wi-Fi. Now you have been registered within the system. You come back and it comes back. You don't have to enter any new data to log in, but there is the option of the organization that's working with it to ask a question, and that's called progressive profiling. And so you might want to ask your zip code before they log in the second time, and then they come back, and the third time you might want to ask, what's your age? And this develops a profile over time of the visitors to your downtown. So like we showed in the previous slide, when you're logging into the Wi-Fi, you provide an email address. Over time, you're collecting thousands of email addresses of visitors to your downtown. The software that we use allows you to develop a relationship with the visitor based on email engagement. So it's a very simple sort of program where it's much like a MailChimp or something like that, where you can create email. And then this is one actually from Covington that I received from the new executive director, the Farm to Table Dinner, where he took and plugged in all of these photos and the content and was selling tickets for a fundraiser. So to the left, you see how the widgets, you can drag and drop, you build your email, and then you send it out to everybody who's ever logged into your email. That's one option. Another option is you can set up a trigger so that when somebody enters your network or leaves their network, they get an email. So if I'm in your downtown and I'm having a good time, I leave and go home, as soon as I exit that network, it could be a trigger and I get an email that says, thank you for visiting our downtown. We hope you'll come back. Here are upcoming events or programs. So there's a lot of really detailed marketing opportunities within that. You can also do segments if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, where, you know, maybe you are collecting postcodes in this example, zip codes. It's an Australian software, so that's why it says postcode. And you want to send an email to people of one zip code versus another zip code, or one gender versus another. I mean, I'm not condoning that necessarily, but there are examples where you might want to target a certain demographic. You can do all of that segment editing as well. And then when you are going from the login into landing page, you can put a video in there that they have to watch. So this is just an example again from Covington of how we utilize that to support our mission and our program. So you're looking from a promotional perspective at everything from, you know, catching them as they log in to developing a relationship with them as soon as they leave. On the right, I'll just show you again, this is what we designed using our branding with the captive portal experience, enforcing our brand, our sense of place, our storytelling through design, and it's wholly customizable by whoever is administering the Wi-Fi program. I apologize, my slides are struggling to turn. There we go. So you have on the one side the user engagement and the marketing promotion storytelling. On the other side, you have the data collection. So there are three ways that our software collects data. The first way is anonymous Wi-Fi data. So what happens is everybody's device has a unique MAC address. And so when somebody is within the Wi-Fi network, that MAC address becomes a primary identifier for the visitor. And it's collected as soon as you enter that based on that identifier. So a profile is developed if somebody logs in or doesn't, regardless. So you get real information about how many people are downtown, how they travel, how long they stay, if they're new or returning, how many visits they make. And I'll show you a little bit more about that. But that is being collected on everybody that comes and goes from the downtown through the Wi-Fi. And obviously that presents some questions about data privacy, and some folks feel a little bit uncomfortable with that. We can talk more about that if people are interested, but just to be clear, this is the same kind of data that's being collected when a Walmart, not that you should because you're Main Street directors, I'm kidding, or a Target or an airport or any private place. The only difference is that it may be a public entity that's collecting the data versus the second source of data is the registered Wi-Fi data. So that is what you saw when you log in with your email address, and the potential to collect more data about who the individual is downtown. And then our software also brings in external data. For example, it brings in weather data. So if you wanted to look and see how traffic in your downtown changed based on an event, say it's a weekly event, continuing to use the farmers market as an example, we could look at foot traffic over time every Saturday morning during that event, but we can also bring in weather so we can understand, you know, why did it dip that third Saturday in June? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, well, because it was terrible weather. So that external data can then be matched up, as well as social media. You can compare your social media campaigns to your foot traffic and see if you were able to make an impact. Obviously, downtowns aren't perfect in terms of data, so there's always going to be a need to use and interpret what happened, but it gives you some real numbers to work with. So here is an example of what some visit data might look like. The dashboard comes out in aggregate, but you can export this in raw data and analyze it. But this makes it a little bit easier. So the top left, you have, it says busiest visits. So the visits, not the visitors necessarily, but the number of times that somebody came into the network or was in the network. So for example, I may be one visitor, but I may have 3 visits in a day. So what they're looking at is, that's really foot traffic. So I think it's really interesting when you get to start looking at your downtown in data. So for example, we see here that Thursdays at 4 o'clock are the highest foot traffic in our community. We see that Sundays are really quiet. One of the most interesting and compelling things has been that our Mondays are just as strong as any other day of the week. So what are the implications for that in terms of businesses being closed on Mondays? What this also shows us is that we are a downtown where people come during the day to work and leave at night. So maybe we want to move the needle on our Saturdays and Sundays because we see that we have the opportunity to grow by getting some of those employees back into our downtown or in the evening. So to the right of that is a chart that shows count of visits. So from here, you start to get an idea of how many people are coming here once and never coming back versus how many of the folks in our downtown are considered sticky in terms of they're here every day. Maybe they're employees, maybe they're residents. And then you get that in between. So who are those people who are coming 1 to 5 times and that's it? And how can we get them back? You can look at the data in a number of different ways in line graphs and charts. But down at the bottom, here we look at over the month. So there wasn't actually, we had an issue in September, so September should be higher where I turned the system off. But when we look at this, we see that October is our highest foot traffic month. Well, when we talk to small businesses, they actually say that October is their highest sales. So we can start to have conversations where people understand the ebbs and flows of foot traffic and revenue, and that can help them develop a more data-driven strategy for their small business. You can also set up zones. So if you think about the micro districts within your downtown, you can identify those and look at how people travel. So how are people coming into your downtown, from what direction, where are they going after that, where are they going after that? This can help inform how you develop wayfinding systems and help demonstrate how people make, how traffic flow happens. So in this case, something that came out that was really particularly interesting was the flow between our convention center and our business districts. So it was shown that, and this is where the green line connects in the bottom, that we had really heavy traffic flow from our convention center to our Roebling Point district, which is, there's about 4 or 5 restaurants there. And so we're seeing thousands of people travel that path. And the opportunities there had not totally been realized. So for those businesses to understand that they can take advantage of the people coming into the convention center by working with the convention center, promoting business, and then thinking about the walkability of that path to improve that experience, understanding that there's a real economic impact of the visitors to the convention center, specifically to that business district above other ones. You also get a sense of where your highest density is within your downtown. And then from the demographics that you decide to collect, you can start to look at demographic profiles. I usually talk about this not in terms of what the real demographics are, but the demographics of who is logging on and using your Wi-Fi. Because when you're collecting visits based on a MAC address, then that's getting everybody. When you're collecting demographics based on logins, that's going to depend on, how many people are logging onto your email, onto your Wi-Fi network every day, and then you can get an understanding of who they are. Our approach in Covington was to not pretend that I was a data scientist, but instead to bring small businesses together, share with them the data, and have discussions about what that means and what the implications were. This whole project was actually developed out of our Economic Vitality Committee, and really as a way to start to look at what is the data behind the economy of our downtown, how do we measure the impact of our work. But although it was an Economic Vitality Committee driven project, it crossed committees of the Main Street approach. So the next question is, okay, cool, but how much does it cost and how do I fund it? There are a number of different ways to look at this. You can think of that portal from a marketing perspective, those emails from a marketing perspective, and you may be able to integrate into your sponsorship programs communication via the Wi-Fi network or advertising via the Wi-Fi network, so that instead of a farmer's market ad, maybe it's an advertisement for a restaurant or an event that's produced by somebody that's not the Main Street organization who's willing to help fund this project. We had a lot of luck working with our partners in the downtown who weren't necessarily wanting to advertise, but they saw value in it. So they were willing to help fund by, for example, we have a community college downtown and they have problems with wayfinding. So by providing information to whoever logs into the Wi-Fi about their campus, then that was elevated their existing sponsorship relationship with our organization. The photo on the right, I actually took out in Venice Beach, and thought that was pretty cool, where you also have that public realm signage. People aren't going to know intuitively to log on to a Wi-Fi network because it's not customary. The success of the program in a lot of ways depends on how much people know about it. So there's a public realm signage element to this. Sometimes those bigger partners maybe would have some real estate there if that works in your downtown, like in this case. Foundation grant. The public Wi-Fi context is being presented for Main Street revitalization, but there's another element to this that's really important to where we're going societally, which is digital inclusion. And so if you think about the conveniences, efficiencies, and access that folks are provided who do have Wi-Fi at home, who have devices, who have data, it looks a lot different for those who cannot afford that. So, for example, a lot of schools are doing these one-to-one devices, but the kids can only access the internet at home, or they have homework and they have to go to the library, and it just creates, in the smart city world, what they're calling durable inequalities. So in Covington, we have a very high low-income population. So in addition to supporting the mission of Renaissance Covington, we were able to provide a public space where people who don't have access to internet could come into our downtown and do their homework or check their bank accounts or do job training, whatever it may be. So from a digital inclusion perspective, sometimes the funding may be there to support that need in your community, or just for innovation in data and Main Street revitalization, maybe. From that digital inclusion perspective, if you do have dedicated CDBG funds, TIF funds, business improvement districts, these are all good sources to help fund a Wi-Fi project. So looking back 4 points and seeing how this crosses all of those, promotion, you have the opportunity to continue to develop your sense of place through storytelling, promotion events, branding. You can look at stronger public spaces where people can sit outside and do their homework. When you have an event, everybody can seamlessly use their square or whatever they're using to sell, their art, whatever it may be. The wayfinding and information that supports wayfinding strategies, economic vitality, the ability to provide those businesses, small businesses, with data to help them make better decisions, as well as to provide it to a potential business so that they can understand what they're looking at from a foot traffic perspective, and then using it within strategic to measure outcomes, whether it's looking at how an event changed your foot traffic over time, or just really seeing how you're impacting the overall health of your downtown year over year. So the data will take a while to show some of those longer term outcomes, but the sooner you start, the more you would be able to see that impact. As far as what Cincinnati Bell offers that is really unique in the market is first the end-to-end solution. So it's looking at everything, particularly in print, from the fiber to the hardware to software to the management, the monitoring, the training. I haven't seen anyone else in the market. That's how I ended up choosing Cincinnati Bell when I was a Main Street director, because I knew that if something happened to the network, it wasn't going to be on me to fix it. I mean, I would joke that, you know, I would have to climb up on a building and like turn it on and turn it off. So having that team behind it, here that if anything goes wrong, we'll come out and fix it. The second point is really important. Should have touched on this earlier. We are very different in the market that data solved, that belongs to the customer, whether it's a Main Street organization that's independent of the city or the city government. It does not belong to, it is not, Cincinnati Bell does not use that data, does not sell that data, does not market to that data. It is owned by the customer, and the customer protects the citizen's privacy, and that's really the bottom line on that. We have GDPR cybersecurity compliance, which is the European Union standard, because we have failed to meet standards in the United States. The highest in the world is GDPR, and it's compliant there. We work as a partner with an organization or a city to train on the software, to support the implementation. And like I said, 24/7 monitoring and maintenance to make sure that everything's working well. And then finally, you know, I've been excited about Main Street revitalization, historic preservation. And I believe that this is a tool that will help our Main Streets be competitive in the market. In addition to understanding what's going on in our downtowns, we get the opportunity to communicate better. And as our workforce becomes more freelance oriented and gig economy, these sorts of tools tell us about innovation and forward thinking, and also provide an amenity to the anybody who is living, working, or visiting your downtown. So if you're interested in looking at this project, I would offer, you know, a presentation to your board, leadership, whoever it may be. You know, just let me know. My email address is there. I can travel. If you're way up north, maybe a webinar would be better, but getting your stakeholders to understand better may be a good first step. Usually what we would do from there, if you understand kind of what the cost structure might look like, that's going to give you a better idea of whether it's viable. So we could look at your downtown and you might say, well, we want this area, and we could kind of give you a sketch of how much that would cost and what that would look like. And then if that seems viable, that's when we start to bring in engineers to come up with that final design, so that you can have a real look at the cost, depending on your infrastructure and some more technical things that I'm not super savvy about. That's why we have engineers. So that's that's what I have. As far as my presentation, I probably went through that a little bit quickly. It looks like we have about 15 minutes. Looks like we have about a half an hour. So I went through that very quickly. I would love to hear your questions, if you all have any.
Yes, we've got some questions rolling in, Katie, and I'll start asking them. The first question, can you provide a range of the costs for the upfront investment and the monthly fee? 5G boxes are being installed all across our town, along with more poles. I'm not sure if I've gone into the second question, but I'll let you start and answer that with the range of costs.
Yeah. Well, the range of cost depends on your fiber availability, right? So that's going to be my big caveat on this. How much fiber needs to be built. But say you have fiber going down your main street. You might think of it in terms of, if you're looking at 3 or 4 blocks, something in the $20,000 upfront range, maybe $15,000, and then a couple hundred a month. If you're looking at something bigger, like 14 or 15 blocks, it's going to go up to $70,000 up front, and that's for all the hardware. And these are really just estimates, and maybe something like $1,000 a month. Some of the things that, we can work with folks in terms of, would they rather pay up front for the equipment? Obviously sometimes in grant situations that works easier, or depending on who's funding it, or we can look at spreading that cost out over time, and integrating it more into the monthly recurring cost, kind of like a lease or rental for the hardware.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead,
Yeah.
finish. I'm sorry.
No, I want to let you finish the second question. I know it was about 5G. So.
Yeah, so the second question, on my text box, they ran together. I'm sorry, guys. 5G boxes are being installed all across our town, along with more poles. Will the access points need to also be added, or can those new 5G boxes serve dual purposes?
The 5G cannot do what Wi-Fi can do. So that 5G is going to create more of a device-to-device relationship. The Wi-Fi allows you to get the captive portal, the engagement process. The Wi-Fi also, while 5G is collecting data, unless you've got a really unique arrangement that I haven't seen yet, the city's probably not getting that data, or the Main Street organization. That the provider is probably getting that data. So unfortunately, no. A public Wi-Fi network and a 5G network don't provide the same opportunities. I did want to go back on that cost scenario, because I did want to share. We're looking at one scenario where we're doing a park, public Wi-Fi in a park, and it's only the buildings around it are right that it's going to cover the whole park, but it's only going to be $9,000 up front and $300 a month. So there are scenarios, if you're looking at a plaza or a smaller public space versus doing it blocks and blocks, where you have to work through buildings and turn around corners, where you could get a public Wi-Fi network that would be maybe a more cost scenario.
Okay, another question that I think a lot of people are probably wondering about. The question is this a Cincinnati Bell program? We're not in a large metro area.
So you don't have to have the Bell infrastructure for this program to be implemented. There's going to be some case-by-case engineering review depending on your infrastructure. You probably need some level of fiber. You don't necessarily need to have a holistic. There's some technology that allows you to sort of, it's not quite as strong as a Wi-Fi network, but it transmits from one access point to the other from a centralized data. No, you don't have to be in a Cincinnati Bell footprint for this to work, because besides the connectivity that we offer, this package of the hardware, the software, the training, the maintenance, the installation, that's something that we've designed that can be implemented nationwide, really.
Okay, another question that I have actually is, when we talked to Katie earlier, one of the things I found fascinating is, tell us a little bit more about how police and fire departments are actually using that, and that might be people's financial entry point into getting Wi-Fi downtown, and the marketing might be frosting on the cake.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So when we looked at that foundation earlier of the smart city, and we said the public Wi-Fi overarches it, from there it presents the opportunity to layer on a number of applications. So if you have somebody in your engineering department or in your police department, if they're looking at some of these traffic flow technologies that do things like preemption, where it turns all the lights green when there's a fire truck coming, the public Wi-Fi network, first of all, sets up the opportunity for all of that to seamlessly communicate. Second, in Covington, what we've done, and in Cincinnati, is we've taken a piece of that band and hidden it and provided it directly to the police department, so that when we have major events, which Blank, for example, where 1 million people come to Cincinnati and Kentucky, those cell towers sometimes get backlogged. And so this allows the police departments to not have to worry about losing their communications channel, because they can go into their hidden private SSID and communicate via the Wi-Fi. There's also heat mapping. It's another data piece that I didn't show you, but it can be used when you do have those big events to look at where the density is and what's going. You see it live. You can see where people are live and how they're moving. So you can say, well, it's really red over here, and it's really clear over here. Maybe we should send some folks out to move them along. And so from a major event perspective, some of that can be really helpful. That's yeah.
Okay. Do we have some other questions for Katie? We tend to have a quiet audience. I'm sure you have more questions you'd like to ask. Katie, are you able to share how much Covington invested in their Wi-Fi program?
Yes. We paid $90,000 up front and $2,500 a month, about 15 blocks. We kind of not lucked out. We were able to fully fund it with foundation grants. So I got two $50,000 grants and a $90,000 grant to cover the cost for 3 years. And that's
okay.
that's the biggest downtown network we've done.
Okay, we have a few more questions that have come in. What ethical issues have arisen from this program, and how can you assure the public that privacy is the utmost importance?
Yes, that's a critical piece of this. So data privacy is obviously an emerging issue culturally, societally. Who's collecting data? What's it being used for? If we think about data privacy, there are 3 pieces to it. It's ownership, accountability, and ethics. So from the ownership perspective, this is where the city or the Main Street organization owns the data, not the corporation. And so in that case, you're presenting to them a best case scenario in that regard. What comes up with the city owning the data is concern about open records requests, right? At this point, we could really use some help from the Attorney General's office to say, yes, public Wi-Fi data is personally identifying information, but that hasn't happened yet. The city solicitors I've spoken with have said that they would treat it like personally identifying information. And just to be clear on that, that's kind of the threshold about what gets protected in an open records request or a sunshine. So if I went in and asked for something that had somebody's name or social security number, then obviously the local not give that to me. If I went in and asked for some data about specific MAC addresses, that would be treated like personally identifying information. If they sued the city, there isn't a lot of precedent there. So that's my caveat, but it's not something I would be overly concerned about because, well, first of all, that would be pretty bizarre, and it would probably be malintended. And in that case, it would probably go to a carrier, not a government, where they're going to be on the record doing that. And then, so ownership, ethics, that comes down to what's the government doing with that data. And I think if you lead with transparency, we are using it to support the health of our downtown. We are using it to apply for grant funding. We're using it to support our efforts and be more data driven. Then that's the best way to go on that. As far as accountability, that's where you can implement policies within ordinances within your city that kind of say, we do not sell citizens, end of story. And some of that can help if people are worried about it. It's a tough conversation because, really so much data is being collected by so many folks that it's almost unfair that all of the big private companies get all of this data on us, but our small businesses just have to, they don't get quite the same level of information versus a shopping mall or a shopping center that's privately owned because they're in the public realm, or the public realm is there isn't data there.
Okay, we have a couple of other questions that have come in. Can you give us an idea of how long it takes for this from start to finish?
These are really good questions. Honestly, the most complicated thing, no, that's not fair. So once you go through funding, which can be difficult, and you want to look at implementation, you can do that in 3 to 6 months. But where we usually get hung up is if it's a big solution, we actually hang these access points usually on private properties. Public properties are easier if you have your government on board, like a parking garage or something like that. But depending on how your downtown looks and feels, that might go, up above a storefront, under an awning, installed on the building. And when it's on that building, it's going to pull power, a minimal amount of power, maybe $2 to $3 a month versus power, and it's going to be connected to the fiber that's into that building. So in order to do that, you have to have a right of entry document. So the property owner has to sign off. We give permission to Cincinnati Bell to come and install this equipment, and we understand that we're going to be paying a nominal amount for monthly electric. And sometimes the friendly property owners and the design don't exactly match, so you end up maybe with a really complicated ownership structure where you have to put an access point because the only thing, and I am in no way, I'm having a wonderful time working with the city of Middletown, but we found that one of their intersections, everything is owned by Cincinnati State. So then you have to get Cincinnati State and all of the bureaucracy involved there to go through the process of signing this legal document, put equipment on. So that can be the big holdup is getting permission for installation. Other than that, we can get it done pretty quickly, unless you have a major fiber build. That will take a little bit longer.
So again, as an example, in Covington, how long from the time you hired Cincinnati Bell to do it before it was implemented?
Well, I started talking, it took me 2 years, to be honest, but I started talking to them, and we sort of developed some of this together, right? So they didn't come to me and say, here's a Main Street solution using technology. And then after we got the prices, then I had to write the grant application and wait for the funding. And I didn't have a lot of pressure, you know, it wasn't because this was such a new idea. So I wasn't pushing the timeline. And then once the funding came in, we signed the contract in December, and it was 5 June.
Okay, that's great. Here's another question. Have you seen any use of the statewide or net fiber network as a backbone to city Wi-Fi projects?
I haven't. I can get back to you on that to see if it's been done. I do believe that that would be viable, but my background's in Main Street, not in telecommunications, so I'll give that caveat. But if somebody wants to email me that question, I can check internally and see if that's been done. But I feel like it could be done.
All right. The next question, has anyone expanded this model into adjacent low-income neighborhoods?
It has not been completed, but there are a number of those sorts of projects in the works, both in Covington and in Cincinnati. In Covington, we're working with the housing authority. They have a project development called Latonia Terrace. And so we're working where the housing authority would actually own this. And instead of looking at it through the lens of Main Street, they'd be looking at it through the lens of communicating programs and services and what to look out for and all that kind of stuff. So leveraging it for a different mission-oriented purpose. So not completed, but in the works. And I think we'll see a lot more of that in the future.
Okay, do we have any more questions? That's the last question in the queue right now. We'll wait just a moment. Hopefully someone's typing. Well, just given a little bit more time, I'll announce our next webinar actually happens to be Monday, September 16th at 1 o'clock. It's preparing for the capital budget. We're presenting along with Greater Ohio and the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. So that webinar happens to be open to everybody. And if you have any interest in attending that, please get on our website and sign in. I don't see any other questions coming in, so I'll thank everyone for attending the webinar today. Thank you very much, Katie, for shedding some light on how Main Streets can really be improving the economy by using data that, like you said, the big boys have. And thank you very much to everyone for your attendance. Goodbye.
Bye, thank you.